I think. Going
Well,
live. Here we
going
go.
live. We are live.
Here
We're
we are.
live.
We are now live. Hi,
Yay.
everyone, and welcome to this fifth live stream of the Keyboard Chronicles. I'm just having a quick look in the chat. So this one's actually going out, if I've managed to do this, to both Facebook and YouTube. So welcome wherever you're listening from. And
Here
if
we
you
going live. We are live. Too
whoa,
exciting.
there we go. So great to have you all on board. So I apologise, I can't check the Facebook chat and YouTube chat simultaneously, but welcome to Tammy and Walter in the YouTube. So you've got a little time between gigs, Walter, because it'll be Saturday night. And knowing you, you've got 14,000 people in some big arena screaming at you.
Yeah. Yeah, Walter would have, like, he'd be playing in some mega stadium, and yeah, that'd definitely be happening, I think. He's surrounded by lots of fans, beautiful women, great musicians. That's the way Walter rolls. So we're very pleased you took some time out, mate, to just come and say good day to our
Here,
live
here.
stream.
And speaking of beautiful women, it's great to have Tammy with us as well as always. And then whoever else chooses to join on all these platforms. So, Paul, first
Yeah,
point of business. You've been
yes,
gallivanting around the world. The
I
amount of
have.
fan mail and grievances and complaints, like why hasn't this guy been appearing on the podcast? You know, it's only
Yeah,
less than half
yeah.
the podcast without Paul on there. How was your trip?
Yes, I understand you've had a lot of feedback about my absence, and I thank my mum for writing both those letters to you, David. That's been very nice of her to do that. No, look, we've had a great time. We did a blast through Europe, and I'm not terribly experienced as a traveller through Europe, so it was all quite new to me. And we had a great time with my wife and some friends, and the pace was extreme. It was hectic, but very enjoyable. And I must say, I checked out the interviews you did while I was away. They were all fantastic. Big thanks to Joe Mascara for also taking some co-hosting duties on as well. But I have to say the show didn't suffer at all for my absence, David. And can I also add thanks for picking like some of the biggest and the best guests we've ever had while I was away. You know, that really makes me happy.
You're welcome. Yeah, look, I felt so bad about that, and yeah, particularly, I mean, Bill Payne was obviously massive. Ray
Yeah,
Thistlethwaite, it ended up being a scheduling conflict as far as he was meant to occur before you went overseas, and then unfortunately
yeah.
got a nasty throat infection. But yeah, look, it was absolutely, again, as Paul said, thank you, Joe. And then Ray was just, I could have talked to him for hours as well, but unfortunately he was on a fairly tight timeline. But one of the most
Uh,
down to earth, pleasant blokes you could ever meet. And hoping to catch up with Ray. I've bought tickets to see Thirsty Merc locally later in the year, so hoping to catch up with Ray face to face and do a bit of a rig tour, which will be fun.
Yeah, no, he came across like a really good fellow, which I suspected he would be, and I was delighted to learn a bit more about him and his background, and Rachel Flowers as well. I've always, I've been following her on social media for a long time, and a huge fan of her playing, and again, someone I was really intrigued to learn a bit more about her background and her approach to music. So, honestly, mate, you did a great job in elucidating some thoughts from our guests. And yeah, of course, Bill Payne, well,
Yeah.
doesn't get much bigger than that, right? So,
And
yeah, brilliant stuff. So, I really enjoyed it. It was actually good viewing while I was, the very little downtime I had while I was overseas. It was really cool to watch you in action, brother. It was
no,
really good.
no, thank you. And yeah, just a brief comment on Rachel because we've just put the second episode live. Yeah, look, if ever the words or term force of nature should be applied to someone, it should be applied to Rachel. She's just absolutely amazing, and the talent she has is just yeah, it blows my mind. And you know things like playing Rachmaninoff concertos from memory.
Yeah.
That's just
What's,
absolutely incredible. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Let
just,
alone all her other wonderful work. So, I mean, I won't give too much away for those that haven't listened to the second part, but her upcoming project actually sounds fascinating that she's got coming up. So, yeah, do recommend that. So, no, thank you, sir. You're now back and you know, got a couple of bands on the fly and you also, I think we talked briefly in the last live stream. You invested in a Korg Nautilus. How's that going?
Yeah, yeah. Well, let me look. This is probably an interesting story worth sharing. So so to everyone listening, watching, I'm not someone who likes to upgrade their gear very often, and we talk about musicians having gas gear acquisition syndrome. I have anti-gas. I hate getting new gear, and the reason I hate getting new gear is I'm very much a creature of habit. I get comfortable with something, I like it, it works, and I'm pretty busy with my music, so I don't like to muck around changing things. But my good friend David Holloway, who I'm talking to right now, said, Paul, look at these end of financial year deals that they're doing at a particular music store on the Nautilus. You should think about it. And I thought about it a lot. And then the more I thought about it, I kind of ran out of reasons not to upgrade. I was primarily using a really old Korg Chrome, which is a polarizing keyboard. Some love it, some hate it. I'm in the love category. But yeah, so I thought, you know what, I'm going to buy this Nautilus. And so I bought it, no dramas, it arrived. I got very excited. I started working with it. And then I discovered it had an issue that is sort of, from doing a bit of online research, is reasonably common with some Nautiluses. Is it Nautilus, David? Nautiluses or Nautilus? What's the
Yeah,
plural
I
for?
don't know. I'd say Nautilus, but that's not based on any knowledge.
So something that's very common or reasonably common is this note cutout issue where I think when you're using set list mode, you hold a note down and it doesn't sustain, it actually just cuts off. So imagine launching into a big pad or something and the thing just cuts off, right? Not ideal when you're playing live, which is what I don't do studio recording, I only play live. Anyway, I had upgraded it to the latest OS when I got it, the latest operating system, and I was pretty frustrated, annoyed, and disappointed when this started occurring because I had already put a few hours of work into starting to program it to set up for live use. Anyway, so this is what I think. Look, it's an interesting reflection, and it'd be worth for those watching this either now or later. It'd be worth hearing your comments, what you think about this. But so I sent one note to the retailer who I bought the machine off of, and one note to Korg's Australian distributor. And the notes were similar. Both notes said, "I've got this Nautilus. I'm a little bit disappointed that it doesn't work properly. And what do you think my next steps should be?" And to both the distributor and the retailer, I told them that I'd emailed the other one. So I said, look, I'd pursued both these avenues to see what the answer is. And I said, look, I still have got the original box, happy to return it and get my money back, but that's not really what I want to do. I'd rather the thing worked. Anyway, so Korg came back to me and said, oh, have you, I told them I'd loaded the latest operating system, which was 1.3.2, FYI. And they said, well, that really should fix the issue, but go back to the retailer if you're not happy. That's kind of what they said. And the retailer, to this day, and this email was sent over a month ago, to this day, the retailer has not responded. They didn't say anything to me at all. So they were quite responsive when I was buying it,
Yeah.
not so responsive when I wanted some help. Anyway, the story, I think, has a happy ending because, as David just mentioned, I was, overseas for a month. And I came back, and I sort of stayed off social media. I enjoyed my holiday, but on coming back, I thought I'd just get back into this again. And I noticed that Korg had released another new operating firmware update for the 1.3.3 for the Nautilus. And the reports on social media was that it would fix this problem once and for all. So I uploaded that. That was earlier this week, David. And I've spent probably since then maybe about 10, 12 hours on the machine with no recurrence of the issue. So I kind of, fingers crossed, I think it's fixed. But the wider thing that I think would be worth reflecting on, and again, our viewers can have their own thoughts in the comments, whether you're watching it live or later. When you spend $3,000 on something, should you get better after sales service? I would say yes. It's a bit disappointing, and look, I would have pushed the issue had I not been able to fix the problem, of course. But yeah, I just feel like if I spent $3,000 on a car, I would expect a bit more if something fundamentally didn't work about the car, and I made a complaint about it. So yeah, I don't know, mate. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think retailers, it's a bit of an interesting one, particularly in Australian context. As you know, there are only a handful of large music retailers here. I'm just wondering whether they get a bit arrogant sometimes, particularly those located in the capital cities where there might be only one or two of them. That said, I would have thought with the margins on gear being relatively low and the exchange rate killing us at the moment. So, down here, if you wanted to buy a new Nord Stage 4, you'd be looking at $7,500, $8,000.
Yeah, yeah.
You would think they'd be a little bit more responsive. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was a bit disappointing, mate, to be honest. But anyway, look, it seems to look. Let's talk about the machine for those who are curious. I love it. It's fantastic. I guess if you've used a Chrome for a long time, it is a significant upgrade in terms of sonic power, but also just the things the machine can do. And I knew that going in, and for a live musician like me, the setlist mode is ridiculously fantastic. And obviously those Kronos units would be going, well, no kidding, Paul, it's been around for a long time, but I haven't had that on my Chrome, so I've had to use some other clever workarounds to try to make my own version of it. But this is a great machine. It's very easy to use too. Being more complex or more in depth than what I had before, I thought, I wonder how I'm going to go setting it up and programming it, and I've actually found it very simple. So it's been a lot of fun to use. But we might compare and contrast, David. I know one of the things we were chatting about earlier was the Montage and Yamaha's approach to their flagship keyboard versus Korg. So your thoughts?
Yeah, it's on a couple of things. As far as usability, as you know, I use a Modi X7. I would kill to have owned a Montage, except they're too damn heavy for gigging for my liking.
Yeah.
And they're similar. They got the set list mode, obviously different architecture, but I love them as well. Yeah, they're retiring the Montage, or have retired the Montage, but they're saying something. The new flagship's coming in September. I can't recall whether they're just going to call it like the Montage Plus or something, or they've not even confirmed. So whereas, I think you were saying with the Korg, the Kronos, sorry, is just going, and essentially it looks like the Nautilus with Aftertouch will be the new flagship.
Yeah. That's right. So it's just an interesting approach, because Korg retired the Kronos, and I know the Kronos was in its day the machine, in the opinion of a lot of people, a very powerful live gigging weapon. And there's been talk for some time now about, well, what's the new Kronos? Let's call it Kronos 2 or Kronos 3 or whatever you want to call it. What's that going to look like? And no word from Korg. And then they just sort of discontinued it. The Nautilus came in, which sort of ended up sort of between the Chrome and the Kronos as far as capability goes and price point. And now they're retrofitting Nautiluses with Aftertouch, so you can either now buy it with Aftertouch, or if you have an existing one, you can send it back to the manufacturer and they'll whack Aftertouch on it for you for a fee, which is a really interesting approach. So maybe that's the new flagship from Korg, which I know just from reading social media has disappointed some people from an approach point of view. I don't know. It's an interesting one, isn't it? So they're different approaches, and I guess there's economics probably inform these decisions from the manufacturer's point of view.
And I get with the flagships, there's a limited market, and I mean, as you know from guests we have on the podcast, that there are major world touring acts that aren't using anything like a Kronos or a Montage to do what they need to do. So the market can't be that large. But and Korg seem to have bitten off a lot too, as far as they've got they're releasing quite a bit of product as a Yamaha at the moment with all the CK series. And Korg, like I've put money down on a Wavestate SE, which I'm excited to receive sometime. And I know originally I was told July, now it's September for availability of that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I think that all the manufacturers are trying to really adjust to the different demographic and market out there. And some things are definitely falling by the wayside, and it appears to be the workstations to some extent.
Yeah, and I kind of get it, because I think it seems to me that the trend is more and more moving towards a controller and a computer, which will then run any number of VSTs or whatever you want to use for live work. And I guess for creating things with the days of onboard sequences and things, I guess a lot of people would rather work in a DAW, a DAW. It's easier to work on a computer with a giant screen and point and click with your mouse than trying to menu dive into a keyboard. So you wonder. I mean, personally, I love the workstation idea, because I'm just got very simple needs. But again, if I look at the Nautilus I just bought, I will only use 20% of that thing's capability. That's just the way it is. But from a live point of view, it'll work well for me. Yeah, so it is an interesting one, and maybe you're right. Maybe that workstation market is less than what it used to be. But let's not skim over the fact you're buying a new keyboard. Tell us about this and why are you buying it? What are you going to use it for? What projects do you have in mind? David, for those who don't know, he's quite busy. He not only plays live in various bands and projects, but he also does recording and releases ambient music, which is very cool. Actually,
it's
really
good
nice.
at putting people to sleep. No, so yeah. Look, to answer your first thing, why am I buying it? I don't know. What'll I do with it? I'm unsure. I just like the look of it. So yeah, look, unlike you, I do tend to suffer from gas, and I'll tend to see something new. And if I've managed to sell something old and I've got the money there in the bank, I'll tend to spend it on something else. So I originally had put down a $500 deposit on one of the Osmos keyboards, which is an amazing piece of gear. But the weight on them is so huge, and I'm on a couple of Osmos groups. For any of our viewers that actually have an Osmos, I'm sure you absolutely love it. I think you'd probably also admit there's a bit of a learning curve to it, and from just sort of eavesdropping on a few Osmos groups, that learning curve seems for some quite steep. And
Yep.
given that I'm technically not that great a player, I think it's actually a bit wasted on me for the price. So when the Wavestate, I mean, they couldn't be more different keyboards, but when the Wavestate came out, I thought, I wouldn't mind one of those. And so I've asked my retailer to swap the $500 deposit over to that. So it's like, well, I've already paid for $500 on it now, and it's about 2/3 the price of an Osmo. So I'm better off. Yeah. So what will I use it for? No idea. And funnily enough, for all my ambient stuff, I tend to use software and soft synths.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I don't know why I'm buying it, except I like it.
Well, it probably illustrates the point that I was just making, right? I assume that's probably just an easier way for you to write your music is to use your soft synth and it's all in on the computer while I imagine you're putting it together with some sort of other application like you don't use. Do you use Pro Tools or what?
No,
you're a Logic guy, aren't you? You're a Mac guy.
yeah. So I was a Pro Tools user for many years. So probably the first 10 years of doing music on computers was Pro Tools.
Yeah.
The subscription model, the dongles, the way that Avid, I would argue, just the way they approached us consumer level people, they just didn't seem interested. I jumped to Logic Pro, probably 10 years ago.
Yeah, right.
And I've never looked back. I couldn't be happier. The only bummer is all those album projects and bits and pieces I did in Pro Tools. As anyone will know, our DAWs don't like talking to each other. It's, you can export audio parts and then bring them back in, but I sort of miss the fact that some of the stuff I was working on I can't use in Logic. But otherwise, I just love Logic to bits. It's just brilliant. I use sort of Native Instruments complete. I use the Arturia full analog set and a few other bits and pieces. Cherry Audio, the GX80, and I'm just about to... Actually, this is an outright blatant plug. The musicplayer.com forums have just opened a shop where they're now stocking a whole range of hardware and software related to keyboards.
Yes, they are. That's exciting. Yeah, I was having a browse through. Yeah,
so I've just bought the Cherry Audio Dream Synth from the musicplayer.com forum. So particularly for our US listeners, do check that out. So it'll depend with the hardware on where you are. Rightfully so. And so, for example, in Australia, even with the exchange rate, it's probably cheaper for us to buy hardware locally. I sort of checked out a couple of things. But for the software, it's great, and I'll be using that shop quite a bit. So if you just go to musicplayer.com, the forums are there in the shop. You won't miss it. So, yeah, that's what I do, mate. But, ambient music, there's a surefire way to poverty if you ever tried to make a living off that.
Oh, well, maybe it's... Well, isn't that any music?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, speaking of which, not being in poverty, so you're, aside from your iconic band Echoes of Pink Floyd, which is still working hard and got lots more shows coming up later in the year, you've got another bit of a project on the flow with a Van Halen tribute. I assume that's what you've been working on the Nautilus doing?
Yeah, it is. So, ultimately I'll port everything over to the Nautilus, but the Floyd stuff will take a bit longer. And we're having a little 3-month hiatus at the moment with the Floyd band, which is giving me an opportunity to work on this new project, which is a Van Halen tribute. And I'll tell you what I've learned in learning the songs. Eddie Van Halen was probably a better keyboard player than maybe a lot of people would give him credit for. And secondly, he's very intense. I think he plays keyboard the way he plays guitar. Like the hands are never off the thing. So there's lots of suspended seconds and suspended fourths, and some wild syncopation, and very very enjoyable learning the stuff. And we've got our first gig a week from now, Saturday next weekend. So I'm looking forward to that very much. I've no idea how many tickets we've sold. Hopefully it's more than half a dozen, but we'll have a lot of fun. And yeah, I'm lucky. I've got some real talented guys I'm working with. One of whom is my brother, who is super talented. So he's on the bass, and we've got a brilliant guitarist, Tony G, a brilliant singer, Tony C, and a brilliant drummer, Dieter. And it's going to be a lot of fun, mate. So I like to get it. It's not often as a keyboard player you get to just go on stage and rock out and wear silly clothes and have a lot of fun. So that's why I'm going to give it plenty of energy and enjoy the fact I'm not playing on every song too. I'll probably be able to have a beer backstage a little bit during some of the David Lee Roth stuff. So it should be good.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. And look, and Van Halen were always kind to keyboards back both in the Lee Roth days and then the Van Hagar days. I mean, I'd argue particularly the Van Hagar days. That's keyboard heaven. I like some of those.
Oh
songs. Yeah.
There's some great tracks that a lot of people will, even a casual. You might not be a hardcore Van Halen fan, but people know Dreams, and they know Why Can't This Be Love, and there's some great keyboard parts in those songs. So the keyboard really drives Why Can't This Be Love.
Yeah.
A lot of I guess non-musicians probably don't even realise that's a keyboard, that riff that's playing all the way through it. But
that's right.
Very 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 exciting. David, I'm changing the subject, but I'm just looking at the chat and. I see Walter's trying to sell you a D50. I wonder why that is, Walter.
Yeah. So Walter's been renovating what we call restoring a Roland D50. That keyboard, I would kill to have a D50. They're just the most amazing. I remember a friend of mine. So what would it have been? I was at university, so I would have been 18 or 19, and he bought a D50. And I remember the first time he brought it over to my place and turned it on, I just about fell over just with how it sounded. So I actually love your idea. Walter, if I ever get one, I'll promise to do an album just using D50 sounds. That's a brilliant idea. I love that. And he also mentioned that he really dislikes the mechanical connections on a VST bass rig. USB 3 will not hold a tour, and USB AB is on its way out. Yeah, look, USB AB is definitely on its way out. I'm surprised it's lasted as long as it has. It's interesting from our guests. There's the odd one that do tour worldwide, but they always seem to mention they have at least one full rig in redundancy, and the majority of our big international artists we've had on the show do tend to still go hardware only. You're quite right. I think it's fine for cover bands. I trust it to a large extent. That said, I always have a 2 keyboard rig, and I always have one of them with a set list mode where if the whole computer falls down I can still play. So I think it's a legitimate point. So
it's one of the things that stopped me from going down that road. And look, you could argue that your hardware keyboard could just as easily crap out on you, or that the power supply could blow, or I just talked about the issues I'd had with my new one. But I worry about relying on a computer to deliver sound, like mission critical sounds for me. I mean, I use a computer now on stage to run video, and it has its moments where it'll freeze up and lock down, and that's a pretty high spec machine. And that runs USB-C to Walter's point, and sometimes USB-C can be a bit finicky with the connections as well. So it's an interesting one. I guess we'll see where this goes, but I'm sticking the hardware route for now. So I certainly take your point, Walter. But I know other people love it, and they love the convenience of throw a laptop in a bag, throw a lightweight MIDI controller in a bag. It's got all the sounds I need. Away I go, and I don't need to worry about lugging around, keyboards and will this be compatible with that, and will my USB stick work in this keyboard I've hired? So I guess there's pros and cons, right, David?
Yeah, that's right. And if you're within 5 kilometres of your home when you're going out to gig, it's totally doable. If you're half an hour drive away, that's when I tend to get a bit paranoid.
or in our case, David, when I see you, I've flown 1,000 miles, so
Right.
that's even trickier, right?
That's right. No, exactly. So yeah, good chat. Thanks, Walter, for that. And I thought we'd just do a quick preview of upcoming guests. So it's been a hectic few weeks of recording. So I mean, the next two episodes still don't feature you, Paul. So we've got that bit of a lag in recording. So I've let our patrons on Patreon know many weeks ago who the upcoming guests are, and do again really appreciate our patrons, including Tammy that's on the chat at the moment. It makes a big difference. Yeah, it makes a big difference to us. So the next two, we've got Sir Tom Jones's keyboard player Paddy Milner joining us. That'll be in the next week or two. I haven't worked out which order we'll go yet. And then the other one is John Mellencamp's keyboard player Troy Kinnett, and they're both really fun interviews. Paddy's is funny because he had just come off tour with Sir Tom and was in a nice, I can't remember what the tropical location was, but was literally sitting in his hotel room looking out at the pool and was going out for a swim as soon as we finished our interview. But he was incredibly generous with his time, and Troy was absolutely amazing as well. So they're our next two. And to pull back the curtain a bit, I mean, just before we started the show, Paul and I booked in, was it 4 more? We've now got booked out over the next essentially 5 weeks. So we've nearly got one a week.
And some great guests too. And a bit of diversity in terms of musical style, which is what we always aim for, isn't it, David?
Yeah, and I haven't told you this, Paul, but there must be another 10 I've got toing and froing with setting dates. And we've also got a few exciting rig tours coming up over the next 6 weeks. I know I've got 2 in 2 nights at a local venue with some amazing acts.
Dave's got some great rig tours lined up.
And we all like a rig tour, Paul.
Love a rig tour. I
mean, your rig tour, like people have really enjoyed your rig tour even.
Yeah, which is ridiculous. But anyway. Anyway, that's all right. And can I say, I'm going to repeat myself, I'm a massive John Mellencamp fan, so thanks again for booking an interview that I can't be part of.
I know. I mean, I just love Mellencamp. And, look, and Troy provides, without giving too much away, he provides some not unsurprising insights into Mellencamp himself, but they're still really interesting the way he puts them. I mean, Mellencamp is a band leader. He's like Springsteen. He knows what he wants, and he'll tell you if he's not getting it.
I can't wait to see the interview.
Look, Troy, he says, he's an amazing musician, Mellencamp, and may he go on for many more years. I think Springsteen will outlive him, sadly. I think based on fitness regime, but I hope he will live to be 120.
Well, you're a massive Springsteen fan, as we know, and I'm a big Mellencamp fan, and folks, David and I have talked often about there's got to be a market in Australia for an Americana-style tribute band. So when are we going to start this project?
Oh, I'm killed to do that, And Petty, they're the big three. Petty, Mellencamp, Springsteen.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a million other great, or what I would style them as Americana-type bands, which I think you could contribute some pretty good songs to the set list. So there's something for us to chew over, mate. We'll have to work on a national project where you and I can sub to each other.
And I've also started, I just realised, and it's my damn camera angle, I can't fit it in, but I'm also wearing one of the new T-shirts. There we go. That's one of our... I'll shout now so it comes through the mic. That's the new one of the new Keyboard Chronicles T-shirts. Thanks to those, there's a couple of people that have reached out and bought them. That helps us big time as well.
Oh, that's amazing.
At all sizes, all colours, different options where to have them shipped from. We try and keep them cheap. Do consider that if you can. Again, it does.
You wear it well too, David. You're very attractive wearing that shirt. And I should say too, we have a heap more band shirts to wear live on the show, either on live stream or during interviews. But today, I'm going to be honest, I've actually got some to wear, but it's too damn cold.
You would have had a frost this morning, wouldn't you?
So cold. So I thought, I'm not wearing a T-shirt. I am wearing a T-shirt, but I'm wearing it under this. So it's just not happening today. Sorry, but it will. I've got more to wear. I'm very excited.
Yeah, no, very good. Plus, you've got to grow your hair back because apparently you waxed and tanned up for Ibiza and that on your European.
Didn't quite get to Ibiza, but I'll tell you what, it was nice and hot over there. We were in Italy, and it was hot. It was properly hot, and I live in Adelaide in Australia, and trust me, I know what properly hot is. It was really hot there, and what I learned about Roman cities Italian cities. I went to Rome, also went to Venice, also went to Florence, and not a single blade of grass exists in any of those places. So it
Yeah.
was hot from above and it was hot from below. Let me tell you, a lot of fun though. Great stuff. We really
Yeah,
enjoyed it.
no, good stuff. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there, Paul. There's a solid half an hour. We just thought we'd catch up. It's a Saturday night for a lot of our viewers
Yeah,
and our local Australian friends. It's a Sunday morning, so if you're not at church, hopefully you've enjoyed that. And yeah, we'll be back, as I said, with more episodes. And we tried to do a live stream every 6 to 8 weeks, so we'll definitely be back with those. And as always, just yell out if you've got any suggestions. We had some
yeah.
great interactions during the week from people asking different questions and stuff. We are on, I don't think I've told you this, Paul, we're on good old Meta Threads now. Not that I'm using it terribly much, but Twitter seems to be on the nose. Although there are a lot of musicians still on Twitter.
Oh, look,
Or X, as I should say.
you have and I'll say you because folks, and I say this all the time. David is actually the brains behind this outfit. I'll just turn up and talk garbage, but you have taken over the social media universe, mate. I can't keep up with all the
I
different
think we
things.
should start our own keyboard players social net.
We probably, you know what, we probably should. Well, let's give it a better name than X, for God's sake. I didn't when that first changed over. I didn't know what was going on. I feel kind of guilty clicking on it because I feel like I'm entering a porn site or something every time the logo comes up. I don't know.
Oh, that's true. I hadn't thought of that.
It's just weird. This X on there. That's just
Yeah,
me.
yeah, no, valid point.
I'm not a big user of Twitter anyway, to be honest. It's a bit feral. But
And one music recommendation while I think of it, for those of us that are over the age of 40, you'd remember the iconic British band, The Sweet, Ballroom
oh
Blitz and Fox on the Run and all that sort of stuff. In the
yeah,
last 6 weeks, they've released a new song. And the reason I'm recommending is it ran through my damn head all night for some reason while I was trying to sleep. Look, the guys look their age, but it's a corker of a song. That's my
I was going to
recommendation.
say the sweet. How old would those blokes be?
Well, and there's not a lot. The guy that fronts and sings them has been with them for many, many years, but I think he might have been an original member.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe the drummer is close to an original member, but the rest of them are new. So it
Yeah,
goes back to that discussion we've had before about some of these legacy bands nearly becoming franchises. But
yeah. It's probably a discussion for another time, isn't
yeah,
it, David?
great
But
song though. Yeah, so that's my any song, any music recommendations, Paul. I've just gone super old.
um, look, I just the other day saw something come up on my socials, which was Lawrence, and Lawrence are a young American band, and I won't, we're getting to the end of our time, so I won't go into a lot of depth, but you can Google them if you like and learn a bit about them. Interesting history and background. A couple of very talented um, kids from America with a theatre background and a film background. Anyway, most people probably think they haven't heard of them, but you have, because one of their songs was used to advertise the Microsoft Surface Pro not long ago, and I
Okay.
know it was used internationally. It's a song called "Don't Lose Sight," and a brilliant song. And I just see they've just released a new, very interesting video on YouTube, just a bit of a backstory to who they are and what they're about. And yeah, check them out. Very talented.
Lawrence.
Yeah, Lawrence, Lawrence. Check them out, Google them, learn a bit about them on Wikipedia. But I really enjoy listening to them, and I wish I had as much talent in that little digit as what
Yeah,
these.
same.
Well, I should say I wish I had as much talent in my whole body as what these kids have in their little digits.
Finger,
They're
yeah.
very, very clever. When I
Yeah.
say kids, they're adults, but
Compared
I'm
to
old, right?
us. Yeah, compared to
I'm
us.
old, so they're the same age as my kids.
That's
That's the way
right.
I look at it.
That's right.
Um, Now, David, there's one final thing I wanted to
Yeah,
say
yeah.
before I fare you well, but I've completely forgotten what that was. So it must have been a lie or not terribly important. So I'll just leave it by saying, mate, great chatting.
Yeah,
And
no,
thanks to
absolutely.
everyone who's dialed in live. But we always get a lot of viewers on these after they get
After
loaded
the
up.
fact, yeah.
Socially. Yeah. So for all of you who are watching this, thanks for your support of what we're doing. We're still loving it. As you can see, David's super busy. We've got heaps of new guests coming up. And David mentioned if you're in Australia, it's sort of maybe going to church time right now. That is a hint for one of our upcoming guests.
True.
I think you'll really like him,
Yeah,
but that's all I'll say.
I'm a bit excited by that one. Yeah, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll be talking soon.